everybody? It's your boy Tony Ortiz back again with another Not This Week in Brave XVS video. And this one was a point of contention, and I wanted to talk more about it. I reacted to the entire 7th anniversary live stream a couple days ago. So please go ahead and check that out if you haven't. It is very long, and you probably are going to guess what my reactions are going to be to a lot of the things that we saw. But if you want to check that out, check it out. I glossed over this briefly, but this is kind of like something that came up because a lot of people have strong opinions on this topic, and I wanted to address mostly why your opinion should be thought about and qualified before you have it. We as a community a lot of times are put in this situation. It's been a while since we've had to vote on anything. But I wanted to cover a lot of that stuff today, and it's not just about the math of which one's the correct choice and all that. You can pretty much reduce it down to the math, but I want to tell you why you should reduce it down to the math and not just tell you to do it and just listen to me because I know what I'm talking about. I think that a lot of times what happens is, we're talking on the internet, we're typing, we don't have a whole lot of time for context, for nuance, for minutia, and a lot of that gets lost, which is why when we were discussing this last night, I didn't really bother to dive into it deeper than I could in text because there's just too much to talk about and too much detail to go over to be able to like do it in a splintered like text kind of conversation. So the reason I'm doing this is not for me or you as an individual, it's for the community as a whole. I obviously can't tell you how to vote, but what I can do is explain to you how you should be able to analyze what's being put in front of you to make the best decision. Now, if you listen to everything I say and at the end of this you still decide to vote a specific way because that's just the way you want to, I can't do anything about that, and I can't be mad at you for that. I can be disappointed, the same way that like when whatever your politics are, you may be disappointed when one side or one party wins and your choice loses, but you really, I don't think there's anything productive in taking like anger out on someone else, or whatever to do that. So that's not the goal. The goal is to equip you with the critical thinking skills that you need to apply to these kind of decisions, and the context you need to use before you just look at something and go, I'm going to vote for option 2. It's not let's make a deal. I'm just going to take door number 2, and or whatever, and sack the $100 I won or something like that. Sometimes that is the correct decision, but it's not something you have to just randomly luck into. You can work your way there by analyzing everything that you have available to you. And then if you want to throw some opinion or some feeling on it and you want to gamble a little bit, then you can gamble as well. Gambling in and of itself is not irrational if you don't care what the outcome is. Now, if your life is going to be affected by it, or you do have a very vested interest in the outcome, then gambling is an irrational behavior. I mean, it's just logically in a book you will read that there's a whole gambler's fallacy. Okay, so that's what we'll cover at the end. We'll cover gambling at the end. But let's first dive right into it. Let's get into the nitty gritty. The first thing you need to do when you look at a decision like this is you need to leave your emotion at the door. You will never make a good decision in your entire life based purely on emotion, okay? Period. It will never happen. They tell you never say never. I'm saying never. You will never make a good decision based purely on how you feel at the time. Okay, so there's all sorts of things that feed into your emotional reaction. There's confirmation bias. There's not analyzing your options. There's not, like a future-proof way of thinking. There's all sorts of things that go out the window when you make an emotional decision. Now, look, emotion is very good. It's what makes us human. It should factor into some of the things you do, but it should not factor in to critical thinking and decisions that you can make, especially when there are high things at stake. Now, this is a very low stakes thing. This is a free reward we're going to get in a video game. But, doctors don't make emotional decisions. They make practical and critical thinking decisions. They use data. Now, sometimes do you have to guess? Sure. But what guides you towards the decision you make are empirical things, objective things, physical, tangible things that you can interact with, that you can respond to, and then you can analyze. Okay, so take that out of it. Think, let me try to make the best decision for me. And in this case, where you're making a decision for the community, right? So when I vote for something, whether it's for this in a video game, or whether it's for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or whether it's for a political party or whatever, or candidate, whatever, you do have to do what's best for yourself, but you also should consider the amount of people you're affecting. And sometimes, say if you're in a very well privileged position in life, and so on, and other examples of that kind of thing, it can always be prudent to actually make the decision that's best for the entire community. There are plenty of people out there, not enough, but there are plenty of people out there that'll say something like, I would love to pay more taxes. I would like the money to go to help the community, to repair roads and bridges and fund social programs and housing and stuff like that. And then there's other people that would say, no, don't do it. I want to keep it all and I want to hoard it all and blah, blah, blah. Now, that might be best for them as individuals, but you can see the merit in making a decision for a community that's the best for the community as opposed to just yourself as an individual. And sometimes you can do what's best for both, depending on your options, depending on the situation. Okay, so that's just kind of like an example of where you can take that real world thinking and you can apply it to something as trivial as what we're about to talk about right here. Okay. So that those are the things I want to get out immediately into your mind. Take those two things out of it. Take the emotion out of it, and then also consider who's affected, yourself, a community, both people, who's going to be hurt more by what your decisions, and so on and so forth. And that one's not as prudent here, of course, but we are deciding for our whole community, the way we based on on our votes right here. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is this particular player's voice poll is much different than some of the ones we had in the past. It's not completely unique, but it is much different. So what you really need to do when you're looking at data is you need to understand the relationship between the data before you even try to start working with it. Okay, so what we have here is we have three different sets of stuff that are very, very easy to compare. They're very similar to each other. In the past, we've had players' voice summons like, okay, this one is a bunch of NV units. This one has a bunch of other rewards like pots and crystals and crowns and all that. And then this third option may be for fragments. We've had that before. So that's a much more apples to oranges type of comparison as opposed to what we have here, which is all summons as the main prize, and then you have little stuff sprinkled in on the side as a secondary prize that are also fairly easy to compare. So this is a much more apples to apples comparison. And this is where the math of the actual items comes into play as opposed to the math of the value of the different items in something like I just described. You could look at fragments like I think last year or maybe a little bit before that, or maybe even a little bit after that, maybe in the second half, the second part of last year's voice. We had fragments as an option. We had like guaranteed NVs as an option, and we had like a third option. And you have to think about the variables there. So the fragments were all selectable, right? So you could control the outcome. There's much more of a ability to control what you actually get as opposed to 10 pulls of a slot machine. All of which might be, even if you win, might be very low prizes. If you put $5 into the slot machine, you pull the lever and you win $2, did you really win anything? That's kind of like where we're going to go with the math. That's one type of math you can do when we're doing comparison. Now the since all these items are very similar, we can do math and see what the best option is for us, just to, based on that, the numbers they give us. But also we can analyze like what is in each package. And when we have something like a guaranteed result as opposed to a more random result, we can actually do probability and find out what is actually better for not only ourselves as individuals, but as an entire community. And again, we will do that. That's why I have the little Excel over here, to kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about. And forgive me for not having the original video pulled up. I pulled up mine because I paused on this and it was much easier to find where this was in the actual broadcast as opposed to clicking through the original broadcast. I also skipped over a lot of the games and stuff, so I have more time on my video where I have like tangible stuff up that we need to compare. So I'm not trying to hit my own ego here and have myself on camera twice. It was just easier to find this slide. And I didn't want to use the in-game one because it's really small, and blowing that up would have been more difficult. But yeah, you can see it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult for everybody to see here, but I can actually do this real quick. We will just talk about what is actually in each package first. Cover myself up there. And then I'll shrink it back down, and we'll start talking about a little bit of the math, but a little bit more about what each item is before we even bother getting into the math. Because I think that's something else that gets lost often, is that even though these items are very similar, they're not the same, and that's very important. Okay, and I'm talking specifically about guaranteed, and then the chance to summon at a specific rate, and then a greater chance to summon at a specific rate. So those are the three main items we're going to compare here. Okay, so now you can see option 1. So you're going to get weekly free 15 summons with 1 guaranteed summon ticket, and the 8. Let's see there. Let's see. It says 1 out of 10 summon ticket, and 8 Super Trust Master Award tickets. Okay, so that means that at let's just do a little math here. Okay, let me pull up my Excel. All right, so 8 times 15, and you can do, I don't know if it'll let me do a auto multiply. It definitely let me do an auto sum. Let me go to the formula here, function library, auto sum. Won't let me multiply. That's unfortunate. More functions? Stats. Multiply? Nope. Go to math. Multi. That's a matrix one. Yeah, and I didn't prepare this because I wanted everybody to understand that, like, you can do this on the fly. You don't have to like have a ridiculous amount of notes. But I'll just do it on my own because I can do math not that bad. So this is 120. Okay, so this is 120 1 out of 10 summon tickets. Now, of course, you divide that by 10 because you have to have 10 of them to do a summon. So you end up with 12 NVs guaranteed. Okay. All right, now, and this is and it's tough to see here, summon ticket Bs, but wait, 8? Is it 8 weeks? No, it's 10 weeks. I'm sorry, 10 weeks. So let's go back here. 10 weeks. And this is where it's kind of confusing, right? So it's not 10 guaranteed summon tickets. And I'm looking this over more. It's weekly free 15 summons. So you get 15 summons. You get 1 guaranteed NV. Okay, with a ticket. Okay, so you get... Alright, so you get the 1 guaranteed times 10. That's right here. And then you get a 1 out of 10 ticket, which is another 1. So that's a total of 11. So actually, we can auto sum that. Okay. And then we get 11 pulls total out of this, guaranteed. And then we'll talk about the STMRs below. Okay, so now the next one, option 2, you're going to get, and I guess we'll say you get 15, or do you get 14 summons because one of them is guaranteed? Yeah, I'm going to assume that you get 14 additional, so that times 10 is going to be 140. So there's 140 chances to get another NV at the regular rate, which is, I don't even know. Is it still 1%? We'll have to go and look that up. But we'll just say you get 140 shots at, the regular NV. Now, I'm not sure. at the regular rate, whatever the regular rate is. It's not 5%. I'll tell you that. At best, it's 3% on that's on banners. So I think this is either 2% or 1%. I have to go look it up. Okay, so we'll just say for argument's sake it's 2%, but I think it's actually 1% for an NV. Anyway, okay, now option 2. And this is, again, see, like I didn't even like fully go through and analyze this as much as I did. I just did the math, like off of what I thought it said, and I didn't even calculate the extra summons that you're gonna get, and that's actually gonna skew it even harder when you really like look at this. So, okay, now you get 20 summons here, so that's gonna be with no guarantee. Okay, so that's no guarantee. So we have to do a different like set of math for this. But each one has a 7% V rate, and you still get your one ticket here guaranteed. You also get the one ticket for each one on the third one. So you're getting one no matter what. So this extra one is basically a wash. Okay. So this is 20 at 7%. And then this one is 30 at 5%. But this is times 10 because there's 10 pulls. Okay? So, total, this is 200. And then this is 300. And this is at 7%. And this is at 5%. Okay. And you can bust out your calculator and do the math on this. All right, I'm going to shrink us back to where this fits over here. All right. So now we've established this. We've got 11 guaranteed NVs here. We've got 1 and 1 guaranteed NVs here. Now, right away, before you even do any of the math, the option 1 jumps out at you, right? Because option 1 is specifically and psychologically designed to prey on the weaknesses of our emotion, okay? You think back to all the times you had bad luck pulling stuff, and you think, oh, I can never get NVs off banner. Oh, I can never get any of this. But if you really had all the data in front of you to see how often you've pulled off banner NVs, and then you also the additional context of when you pulled them, was that unit still relevant? Did you need them for an STMR that you didn't want to spend a Moogle on or whatever? Like all this other extra stuff. Did you need them for EX3 so you could get them into Clashwells? When did you pull them? How many of them were premiums and blah, 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 and how much lapis did you spend on other random stuff? I mean, how efficient were you with spending your lapis on summons? Do you understand like how much data there actually is that you cannot account for in the moment when you decide, okay, well, I like 10 guaranteed and then a 2% shot out of 140 more than I like these other ones because I know I'm going to get these 11 or these extra 10 guaranteed. And that's why this option is a trap. This option is a trap because what it's doing is it's playing on your brain wanting to be safe. And that's 100% normal. Don't feel bad about that. And it's not even technically wrong, okay? Now, if this was a game show and they were like, okay, behind curtain number 1 is a guaranteed $10,000, and behind curtain number 2 could be 5,000, or it could be 50,000, and then behind curtain number 3 could be 0, or it could be 100,000. There's a lot of people that would pick curtain number 1, behind curtain number 1, and they would be correct to do so because that's a life-changing amount of money that maybe pays off your car, maybe takes a chunk out of your mortgage, whatever. Especially when you compare it to the feel bad of walking away with absolutely nothing, or like half of that amount. Okay, but remember, this is not that scenario. That's an analogy, and it's not a good one because this is not going to affect your actual life in any way. Okay, so when gambling is appropriate is when there's nothing to lose. And when you think about losing 10 guaranteed NVs to potentially get 15 or 20 or more, you also have to factor in how badly do you need NVs. Like if you have an account that's at endgame, you probably don't need that many NVs. Maybe you've got some stuff at EX1 that you'd like to get to EX2 or EX2 to EX3 or whatever. But then you have to understand this additional context. The NV pool, since these have no different rates than we're going to have, not only is each pull going to be worse for you as we progress and we add more units to the pool that maybe you don't need, but since we're not getting rid of old units, every single pull you pull is going to be a worse and worse odds to get what you actually need. So in this case, if you have all these dice you have to roll, and you need to, like, let's just say I had a pile of d6s in my hand, the most common dice, the ones you would use at a casino, the ones you use in most gaming, okay, Yahtzee, all that stuff, the ones you roll in Monopoly and board games, okay. If I had a pile of those in my hand and I needed to roll all, if I rolled sixes, I get $5 for every six I roll, okay. If I roll a pile of 10, my odds are to get like 2 or 3, right? If I roll a pile of 20, my odds go up by a lot. And that's where this is kind of coming in. And again, it's not a tangible real life asset. So gambling is actually the better thing to do because, and I'll say this at closer to the end when we actually cover gambling, because you're actually very unlikely to get the bad side of the gambling in this case because it's electronic, okay? This is a very, very unique issue when it comes to electronic gambling and the way the law works. And even though a lot of people are like, oh, loot boxes are, rigged and everything like that. Well, they quote unquote can be. It's not in the company's vested interest to have them be rigged, okay? Because there's lots and lots of penalties and punishments to be happening to them if somebody actually digs through the data and finds a consistent, like, or whatever. So remember, when you open any ticket in this game, you are rolling a die against an algorithm, and that algorithm is going to come up for you sometimes, and it's not going to come up for you other times. But when they post those rates, because they have to by law in most of the countries where this app is eligible to be downloaded, the reason they post the rate is because they're required to. Why and what business sense would Gumi gain anything out of posting the rate, especially when the rates are not that great, right? What do they gain from that? They don't get more people gambling because the rates are bad. If anything, they're going to get less people gambling because the rates are bad, okay? So just keep that in the back of your mind. We'll talk more about that at the end. Let's finish the math, though, first, okay? So let's do a little calculator. I'm not going to bother to share this, but I'll pop it up here. Okay, so let's say we have our 140 and we multiply that by, remember now we're working with percentages, so when you multiply a percentage, you have to do it correctly on a calculator. 0.02 is what 2% is, okay? So that's 2.8. So let's just round up and make it easy. Let's say this is 3. Let's add our, we could add 10, but let's just do the 11 because we're getting a free, whatever ticket as well. And so that's an expected NV value of 15. Right, so this is what we got. We've got 10 guaranteed. We've got 11 guaranteed. Or, I'm sorry, 14. I can't add. So we've got 10. We'll put 14 and then 10 in parentheses. Okay. So that's what we would get. We're going to get an expected value of 10 guaranteed, and then 4 more from our randoms and our guaranteed ticket. Okay. Now let's just go back into our calculator. Let's clear all, and let's do 200 times 0.07, okay? And that comes out to be 14. This is a 7% rate for 2 pulls, and that's actually pretty even, miraculously. You'd think with 7 it would have to be 201, but hey, I'll take it. Let me just clear this again and make sure I didn't make a mistake here. Yeah, that's what it is. So plus your 1 from before, you're going to get 15 NVs. Okay, so only about an increase of maybe 1. But keep in mind, with this here, I'm actually overestimating, I believe, the NV rate. So with a generous NV rate, you're still expected to walk away with 1 extra with option 2, okay? And like I can go back and we'll actually look at what the actual NV pull rate is. In fact, you know what? Why don't I just Google it right now? They might not be posted here. We might have to go in game for this. Let's take a look. Let's hide this. Oh, I'm still patching my emulator version. All right, let's do this again. All right. We'll have to take a look in game. But let's just keep doing the math for right now, and then we'll go back and readjust. But like that's me being generous, right? So even with me being generous, you're still odds to get one more than you would. Now, could you get lower? Yes. Could you go down to like maybe 10 and end up with a few more less? Sure. But could you go higher? Yes. And you're going to go higher at a higher rate than option one. So again, with only like a 1 or 2% here, say you pull you pull above average and you pull 5, okay? That's awesome. But if you did the same thing and you went above average here, you see how you get an exponentially higher, because this is almost cubed of a rate of how much higher you can go. So it's not just a flat line. Or let me do this for the camera right. It's not just a flat curve. Okay? When you increase the percentage of how you pull, you actually have an exponential increase in when you hit it actually being, that NV level. Okay? So that's something that's super important that a lot of people don't understand, because it's perfectly reasonable to be like, oh well, if they increase the percentage by double, then it's just a flat whatever. But this is not a double increase. This is more than double of an increase of the rate, right? So again, and odds are you will come very close to this percentage. All right. The way a lot of these companies get themselves sued and buried in court is they have algorithms that are too random and actually take somebody away from where they're supposed to be in the governance of gambling and of the gaming commissions in the countries and in America and the states they operate in, and that can be a big problem. Okay, so again, we'll talk more about that later. All right, so it's still patching. Let me go ahead and do the math on this one though. All right, so 300 times 0.05. And that is 15. See, so we're curving up a little bit more. So we're going to have 16 total here. But again, this is 100 extra chances. And if you roll anywhere near above average, you are exponentially rolling above option 2. So this is just the basic math of it. If you take your emotion out of it and look at this and go, okay, look, this is not money that's going to change my life. This is not, a tangible thing that's going to have an effect on, my day to day, and so on. When you look at this is the average, or it should be. It's the potential average is about where you should be. This is where the dice should land if the algorithm works correctly. Okay. When you look at external factors, like that, this isn't even necessarily a great reward. Okay. Getting a 10 guaranteed NVs or getting potentially 15, total NVs or whatever, all of those, no matter how many you end up with, are another dice roll in and of themselves to maybe get something that you need. Okay, and those odds are going to fluctuate, like I said a little earlier, by a very wide margin from account to account and from person to person. Maybe what you need is the last NV that you really like that you couldn't afford to pull on, but isn't that great for end game content? Maybe you want a Bartz or something and you didn't get a Bartz. Okay, maybe for some top end players they really want a couple extra copies of maybe one of those premiums that they couldn't afford to grab, because they're a Dolphin or they don't spend any money at all. So that is going to wildly fluctuate between players. So by lowering the amount of times you even spin that extra wheel, you lower your odds of getting stuff that's actually useful to you. If we get 10 guaranteed NVs and we end up with a total of 14 because we roll at odds, and we get 4 Noctises and a bunch of other stuff that we don't need, then what did we really gain? And again, if you go into the middle or they apply to the other categories as well. If you roll really, really poorly in either way, what did you really gain? Nothing. So really what you're looking at here is you're looking at probability, but you have a chance, the real decision you have is the chance to maximize your attempts at getting a single thing or more that you need. And unfortunately, that's the way gacha works, right? Or any gambling situation works. The more time you spend at the table, the more chances you have to win, the more chances you have to lose. The thing is, when you walk up to a table in a casino, you're betting something, okay? We're not betting anything here. This is a free spin of a wheel. So typically, this is what's different. What's the change in philosophy here is what they call a max a min and a max a max. Now, a max and min approach is what you would think of and is the most rational thing when, again, like I was describing, your life, your livelihood, your family, whatever depended on it, right? So that philosophically, the rational thing to do is if you're trying to live in a society where everyone has their basic needs met and maybe the people at the top have less, that's like a max and min type of society. Same thing with like, I'm only going to gamble on things that are very, very low risk but also very, very low return. But again, you're sacrificing something where you could lose, right? And then max and max is the exact opposite of that. It's maximum odds, maximum spins, maximum rolls of the dice, and whoever gets the luckiest in the top 0.01% deserves to have everything and deserves to have all the stuff that they want. Again, irrational if you're risking something. But when you remove that element of risk from the decision and you're only looking at what can I possibly win, my floor is here, and then my ceiling is up here, that's what the real decision making comes in with. So now when you raise the floor with your guaranteed NVs to here, you know, or even up to halfway, that's a rational decision that you can make. But you are also cutting yourself off from the ceiling, right? And that's the kind of decision you have to make. Now, what I really want to get to the bottom of is how actual high is the ceiling and the floor on this. And I think the floor is actually much lower. Let me go and try to find the pull rates. I have no idea where they are in game. I know they're in here somewhere. So let's see here. Let's get rid of this. Okay, and you'd think that they'd be in the summon tab somewhere. Oh. I haven't played on emulator in like a month, so here we go. Let's just go to a standard ticket. Info? No. They might be in the options menu somewhere. Terms of use. News. Nope. How to play. Help. No, that's not what we wanted at all. Other. Nope. Where are the rates at? I know you can look them up in game, but I don't know where they are. Well, these aren't. Doesn't really matter with the emulator, but okay. Maybe it's where they add a unit to the pool? Let's see if I can Google this. Okay, yeah, rare summon rate 1% times n, which is any kind of variable that um, is in the game. 3% for off banner. Okay, wait. Oh, this can't be correct. Oh wait, yeah, okay. It says envy rate increased from. Oh yeah, it was 2% and it's increased to 3% now. Okay, so this changes things a bit. Maybe I don't know. Hold on, wait a minute. Normalized, gacha. Do. Rarities removed from featured. It was 125 when it was first deployed. It looks like, yeah. And then it went up to 2. Rainbow rates decreased from 875 to 8. Envy rate increased from 2 to 3 in March of 2021. Rainbow rate increased from 8 to 12. But this is on. Uh, this is not a great. Drop rates button. Here we go. Here we go. You can check more detailed summon rate in game on the summon menu. Click drop rates button and then click another drop rates button. Okay. So summon. And there's supposed to be a drop rates button somewhere. I just must have spaced right past it. Okay, let's just go somewhere where there's a ticket. Ah, here we go. Drop rates. All right. Blah, 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 blah. Click this again is what I'm supposed to do. Okay, here we go. Hold on. So here, this is also educational. XVS. Rare summon, yeah, okay. Each rare summon is based on probability, including all eligible units. No individual unit is guaranteed after a fixed number of draws. For dealing with a 1% drop rate, it's not guaranteed. Yeah, standard gambling disclaimer. Okay. Step up summon drop rates are where they increase the odds of, whatever the unit is, blah, blah, blah. Limited time, so on and so forth. Okay, let's click on this again. Okay. Drop rates when performing a featured summon are as follows. So it's 3% for featured, not for like regular. So let's get out of here. Let's go to standard summon. Let's go to oh, can you can't actually. Oh, okay. So I guess what's the question is, are the tickets going to be running off of this drop rate pool, or like is this the same? Okay, yeah, it says 3. All right, that's good. So that actually is really good. That makes option 1 much better than I initially thought, because this is actually 3 and not 2. So let's clear this out again and go 140 times 0.03, and then we go up to 4.2, which, we'll just round down for simplicity's sake. So this goes to 15. 10 guaranteed. Okay, so that's actually much better. So it looks like what Gumi tried to do here is actually balance them all as much as they possibly could to not screw players over if the community voted one way or another, which is actually really cool, and not something I would expect to happen at all. So like, this is a prime example, right? So when I did the math on my own, in my head really quickly, it looked like option 3 was just clearly the best by quite a bit, not only because of the extra 100 rolls of the dice, but because of, how much more of a percentage increase that was 5, because I thought it was 2. That's more than double. But actually 5% increase is not as high as, it actually is in game, again, algorithms notwithstanding. So this is actually pretty close. And it actually doesn't really impact the averages as much as you would think it is on face value, if you actually do all the math. So this is really a cool thing, actually, that there, to show you that there really technically is no wrong decision here, but there is a sound and unsound decision, and again, it kind of like covers what you know we already talked about. So the good thing is that no matter how the community votes on this, the rest of the people who wanted to roll the other way aren't technically going to get screwed on the math as hard as they might have, which is, again, full credit to Gumi for actually balancing this out properly. Of course, it doesn't feel like a 3% NV pull rate when you summon, but uh, again, that's because you're usually summoning in chunks of 10 or 11, and at 3% even, you have to do 10 of those before you're going to hit 3, right? So it's never going to feel amazing, at that low of a rate. And it's never going to feel great again when you're actually just when you hit a strawberry, you're going to actually like have to roll a 1 in like 300 roll to get like what you want or something that's useful to you in any way. So yeah, there you go. So personally, I don't even know what I'm going to do now. I'll probably go with option 3 just because, again, more rolls of the dice is always going to give you more chances to get something that you need. Even if you get a lower amount of stuff, that doesn't necessarily mean if you hit more reds you would get something usable. You might have just hit a red. You might have had 3 extra rolls that are red for under a 0.5% at something you needed. And you failed them anyway. But yeah, this is a really interesting exercise in probability. Now, I did promise we were going to talk a little bit about the gambling part, which let's pull this back up here, and I will do that. So, before we jump into that, real quick, the side items, STMR Moogle tickets here, mystery crystals in the middle, and then the bonus tickets on the end. So the bonus tickets have a chance to give you lapis. They're mystery crystals. You should have no problem acquiring a lot of those. Also, they're giving out some eraser cactuars as well. So if you do need to like eraser cactuar an old unit you over leveled, you can definitely, go ahead and grab those back. Yeah, because you use what crystals by the overlevel cactuars, right? Yeah. And then STMR tickets are like, unless you're a brand new player, these are pretty much completely useless to you. You'll get so many by just doing things in the game, especially now with Item World being fixed. Item World's getting fixed, so that means you have every reason to go to 200k Item World points every time they reset it, if not further. If and that's going to give you a bunch of extra STMR Moogle tickets and stuff like that. So the best option is clearly on option 3 on this one. You might be able to get, if you get like 1 with each week, if you get 10 of these, you might be able to get like 4,000 lapis if you get super lucky, something like that. But you can get like 1,000, 2,500, something close to that, depending on how lucky you get with these as well. Even that's only if it's one. If it's more than one per, that's really good. They don't really say here in detail how many of the secondary prize you're going to get, so we don't really know there. But let's talk about the gambling stuff really quick, just to make sure that everybody understands how the law works. And it's going to, of course, vary depending on what region of the world you live in, and if you live in the United States, what state you live in, and so on. But in many countries in the world, you're going to have laws that govern this random chance stuff that we've been talking about. And especially in the United States, I can use this as my best example because I'm pretty intimately familiar with how this works, and you can actually learn this all on yourself. It's all publicly available information because it's regulated by the federal government. So basically, like a slot machine, right? Almost all of them are electronic. You will not really find old school slot machines anymore. They're too hard to manage and regulate, and not really worth keeping up. They're more antique pieces. Okay. So what the government does is it mandates that a certain amount of machines have to have a certain amount of algorithms, and those algorithms cannot be way too low as to screw the player, and obviously the casinos are never going to put them way too high because they would not make any money. So what you end up with is like a middle chunk of separate algorithms that are a little bit better or a little bit worse than each other, and then the government, depending on what state it's in, and and how their gaming commission works, will mandate that a certain amount of machines on the floor have to have X amount of this, X amount of this, and X amount of this, or more, right? So, like, the top one will be or more. If the casino wants to give away money, they can put the best algorithm in all the machines if they want to, but they can only put a certain percentage of the worst algorithm of how many times you're gonna win on the slot machine. Okay, so what that means is, like, when you walk into, say, a casino in like Las Vegas, because that's the easiest example, and you walk into a floor and they say there's 1,000 slot machines on the floor, the Nevada Gaming Commission, the state that it's in, will say that only 20%, arbitrary number, can have the algorithm where only 1 in 10 pulls is a winner. And then from there, the most you can have on top of that is 20% of this next algorithm where 1 in 8 pulls is a winner. And then they'll say legally you can have up to, and then legally they might go, okay, and then the other 70% you can do have to be at least 1 in 7, or they can be higher depending on what you want to do. And they'll give them the freedom, or they might have a strictly mandated tier system or whatever. And and that's why you hear these rumors, right? You hear these confirmation bias usually, but sometimes there's credible stuff to support this. But the casinos will always want to put the machines that have to hit on a higher rate on the ends to entice people to come in and play on the machines with the lower rates of actually hitting, right? And again, this is a gaming commission thing, and these same rules bleed over into what's considered gambling for electronic stuff like this. So every game that makes a gacha component, a loot box or whatever, and blah blah blah, definitely does not want to be regulated by a gaming commission because they will make less money. So when they post these rates, they're basically posting an algorithm to you, and they're telling you what it is. And the thing is, if they lie, they're subject to a whole different set of laws. Like if someone dives into the numbers, like I mentioned earlier, and they find that they're lying about how high the rates are and they're actually much lower, they can then be sued. There's false advertising, there's malicious business practices, there's even racketeering and conspiracy possibilities that can go on and on and on from this. And that's just in the American system. It can be much worse. America's very, very hard capitalist, so like I'm sure the punishment in other countries are probably much more stiff than they are here for that kind of violation. And the reason they're even volunteering this information to you is because they're mandated to in many places. So like I don't quote me on this, but Europe and Japan are very notorious for having to post the actual gambling rates. It's part of, they want the consumer to know what they're getting into. That it's a public good. It's what your governments exist for. To regulate society for a positive thing. So like, hey, the odds on this pachinko machine are super low. Do I want to put my money into it? Or do I want to, like buy a beer or something instead, or buy dinner instead? And that's the kind of thing that we're dealing with here. So when you pull in this game and you get terrible, terrible luck and you pull like whatever, I played other games where like I summoned like 100 things and I didn't get any 5 stars or whatever, and it feels terrible, right? But the problem is, this is a computer, it's an algorithm, it generates a random number. However, again, there's a minimum it has to hit, so you're not actually dealing with true RNG. No matter what people say, electronics, it's very, very difficult, albeit almost impossible, to generate an actual random number that can't be solved by another supercomputer that is on a higher level, okay? That's why when you watch like video games and you see speed runs, you can see RNG manipulation, because the older the device, the less capacity it has for less bits of data, the easier it is to figure out how that thing is rolling the dice and if that dice is actually attached to other things in the game to make it appear more random than it actually is. I know that's a big giant word salad, but just take away this. When it comes to electronics, you are not dealing with true randomness, like if you rolled a physical die, okay, or dice. You're not dealing with true randomness in that same way when you're on electronics. No matter what they post, there is an algorithm that, and whether it matches what their rate is or not, even if they're lying to you, you are pulling at a certain amount of hits. You will be guaranteed a certain amount of hits given an infinite amount of time. Okay, so take that out of your decision making. Okay, take out your bad luck, quote unquote, from the decision making because it technically doesn't even exist in this kind of arena. It doesn't exist in slot machines. It's the luck is in the physical world. When do you walk up to it? When do you hit the button? And are you hitting the button at the time when the machine is programmed to actually go off? That's actually where your luck is. It has nothing to do with the actual intrinsic part of the game. So, if you can maximize the amount of times you walk up to the machine and pull the lever, you maximize the odds that you're actually going to hit something that is beneficial to you. If you get a guaranteed 10 hits on the slot machine, but it's all a bunch of cherries, you might only win about, $100 or something, say, just arbitrarily. If you walk up with 40 pulls and you hit only cherries 3 or 4 times, but then you hit all the bars or you hit all the sevens, and you get an exponentially bigger prize, like let's say, I don't know, a premium leader skill unit you had to skip, or whatever. If that's the difference, what's better or what's worse, right? So again, there's actually no wrong decision here. There's no wrong option. I think that there is a best option, and it's probably option 3 because, again, with the math, your odds are, if everything averages out, you're going to have slightly more shots at getting something that you actually need, all context included. But what they did a really good job at balancing the numbers, again, assuming that they're all accurate, with the guarantees. So it actually looks a lot better. Option 1 looks a lot better than it did when I first initially looked at this and I did before I did the math. I would say if there's a clear loser, if this math is all accurate, if their rates are all accurate, it's option 2. You should definitely, whether you decide to pick option 1 or option 3, I think I think you're fine in that decision, especially if the math for option 1 is actually accurate. Again, I'm going up the in-game rates here, and I think that they're probably pretty close. It's electronics. I mean, the global version, they're probably not messing around because there's all sorts of countries that could come after them. I mean, the game's distributed in Europe, it's distributed in America, Canada, all over the place. They definitely don't want to get sued. So I don't think that they're messing around when they say it's 3%. I think that the 3% is probably accurate. If it says that in game, that's what I would go with. So yeah, I think that that's pretty decent. And but option 2 clearly looks like you're risking a little bit more to get about the same return on average as option 1. I guess if mystery crystals are more valuable to you, and they should be, it's probably worth the gamble because your expected value is even, and then you just have more spins, more chances to go high, right? To go low, option 2 feels bad because you are going below. You'd have to have really bad luck to go below. So here's another thing you can do. This is a bit more theoretical. This is calculatable, but not at my level. I'm not a PhD mathematician. But what you could do is you could calculate the very low end of if you had the algorithms in hand, of worst case scenario, and with that guaranteed 10 NV buffer, 11 technically. You're not, but a difference of 10. It's a difference of 10. So you're guaranteed 10 for sure. So you're going to get, that gap made up in the math. But that could also roll bad. See, so the extra 4 NBs you're getting from option 1, you could also roll well below 3% on that, like many of us do on our regular summons, right? Or you could roll well above. And it's the same thing with the 7%, right? You could roll below that 7% rate, you can get below expected value out of that. But you could also get much higher. And the odds of you going higher, again, is exponentially higher than with the option 1. So option 2 seems like it's not that great, actually, comparatively with just the math. But when you go to that max possibility, you're giving yourself a 10 to 20% chance or whatever the number is of going off, hitting the big jackpot. It's actually not too bad. It's they did I reiterate, they did actually a really good job of balancing these out. So this is probably going to be the least feel bad player's voice summon that we've had. I think, if I can recall. Um, I don't know. I have to go back and look at some of the math of the other ones, but yeah, hopefully this has helped you kind of like um, understand what to do when a decision like this comes up. Um, and this is a great example of how, everything is not as it seems when you look at it directly. Um, I was not 100% sure about the math, so I went and did it. And I also was not going to accept that an appeal to emotion is the right way to go. And like, hey, everybody's luck's terrible. Gumi's screwing everyone, so to go with the guaranteed ones. There's no other option. Um, you know, again, and this could all change, right? So if there were option one was a guaranteed 5 NVs, but it was select tickets, and it was from a pool that had some units you wanted in it, that completely changes everything we're talking about, right? Just like the example I gave in the beginning from last year, where we had an option for NVs, we had an option for a bunch of summons with a better rate, and I think we had an option for fragments. The fragments were guaranteed, and you could pick from a list of pretty much everything that was in the game up to X point. So with all the fragments, you could get a bunch of units you already had to EX2, EX3, which is more important than maybe getting an EX0 unit that's really good that you have to wait 4 or 5 months to get up to EX2, right? So, assuming bad rolls in the shard dungeon. So that changes everything, right? So again, hopefully this has helped you dial in on not only the math, but how to apply emotion and when to apply it, sparingly, how to analyze the data you're looking at, and how to put context and minutia around it. This is not the decision making process you should use for gambling in a casino. You're betting money to try to win more, but when you lose that money you put in, right? This is one where all you have to do is log into the game once a week for 10 weeks in a row, and you get this stuff for free. And then again, lastly, how to decide what's best for the community, because we all have to vote for this and then we're all stuck with the result, right? So if you're out there and you're thinking like, oh, I have every unit in the game, like say you're a whale and like I have everything EX3 already. Well, option 3 is absolutely the best for you because it's got a chance for lapis and it's the most random rolls for you to just like pad out extra STMRs or whatever. And also it's the best for, mathematically, it's probably the best odds for like everyone else playing, right? Like you have no reason to hoard, and you can actually use your vote as more of a, well, it's best for everyone, or maybe you think as a will like, oh, I want everyone to get a guaranteed 10, because the new players need the guaranteed 10s more than the players that have the accounts that are further along, and new players maybe you think are like the only way that the game's going to continue to go on, right? So you want to take care of them. Or maybe you think that the only way the game's going to continue is that if a lot of the mid to high level players continue to spend the money, because new players don't spend money, they usually spend a couple bucks and drop off. Your loyal customers are the one. You see how complicated this can get when you start to introduce a lot of the subjective stuff into it? That's why you want to take all that subjective stuff out of it. Do the objective stuff first. Then once you have a good understanding of the objective stuff, then start pulling the subjective things in. Like, okay, yeah, I want 10 guaranteed NVs. But if there's only like 4 NVs in the pool of 250 that I actually need that'll actually help my account, maybe I want more shots at getting one as opposed to less shots at getting one. And I'm willing to gamble a little bit on getting a few less shots to maybe get like almost, 3 or 4 more shots at it. Or sky's limit. You could end up with double the shots, whereas over here you're fixed at this many shots at a unit you need. So there you go. We went an hour, nice and tight. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free. I'd love to discuss this more. Again, I'm not a mathematician, full disclosure, but I did go to college for logic, so that I have quite a bit of. And I'm more than happy to lend that ability to anybody who's confused, doesn't know what they should do. And again, without the context, like for my account, what's the best thing to pick, and so on. But what you can take solace in is in this particular player's voice, no matter what the community ends up voting for, on average, we should all get about the same thing no matter what option we pick. So there you go, guys. Take one positive away from the live stream if you didn't take anything else positive away from it. They did a pretty good job with this one and balancing it out. We'll talk to you next time. It's your boy Tony Ortiz. We out of here.